On a sultry June evening, as the sun dips behind the shimmering towers of downtown Los Angeles, the city's streets pulse with a tension that feels ripped from the pages of a political thriller. Sirens pierce the air, helicopters thunder overhead, and hundreds of determined protesters stand shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising in a chorus demanding justice and change. This is not a movie set. This is the United States of America in the summer of 2025, a country at a crossroads. Tonight, the stakes have never been higher. United States Marines, deployed by direct presidential order, have officially arrived on California soil. The question reverberates from city blocks to newsrooms worldwide. Is this moment the tipping point for democracy in the world's most influential economy? How did we arrive at this extraordinary confrontation between state and federal power? And could what's happening in Los Angeles right now reshape the way America governs itself for generations to come? To find the answers, we need to travel back through more than a century of American legal tradition. Since the late 19th century, the United States has balanced the necessity of internal security with an abiding suspicion of military overreach. The Posse Comitatus Act, passed in 1878, was born out of the painful aftermath of the Civil War, when federal troops were stationed throughout the South. This law strictly forbade the use of the Army and, later, other military branches in civilian law enforcement, enshrining a clear boundary between the military and the people it serves. Only in the rarest and gravest of situations, through the Insurrection Act of 1807, has a president possessed the authority to send troops into American streets. The last major invocation of these powers was in 1992, when President George Herbert Walker Bush sent federal forces to Los Angeles in the chaos following the Rodney King verdict. It was an act fraught with risk, and in the decades since, presidents have been deeply reluctant to cross that line again, fearing both public outrage and a full-blown constitutional crisis. Fast forward to the tumultuous spring of 2024. President Donald Trump, having secured a second term on the promise of aggressive immigration reform, wastes no time making good on his word. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, launches a wave of raids unprecedented in scale and speed, detaining an average of around 2,000 people every single day. This is a staggering increase, more than 6 times the daily average recorded during President Biden's last year in office, when figures hovered around 311 arrests per day. The scale and visibility of these raids ignite a storm of protest in Los Angeles, a city renowned for its immigrant heritage and cultural diversity. Demonstrations quickly spread coast to coast, erupting in cities like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Boston. While the vast majority of protesters march peacefully, isolated incidents of violence and looting flare up. By midnight, over 24 businesses lay ransacked, and hundreds of citizens find themselves in police custody. In response, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass imposes a strict dusk-to-dawn curfew, locking down a 1-square-mile section of the urban core. On a tense Tuesday, President Trump, declaring a full-blown assault on peace, public order, and national sovereignty, orders the deployment of approximately 700 United States Marines and more than 2,000 National Guard troops to the Los Angeles area. The stated intent is to stabilize the situation and protect federal property. The cost of this extraordinary military show of force? Congressional testimony pegs the initial price tag at more than $134 million, with costs expected to mount as the crisis drags on. The reaction is electric. California Governor Gavin Newsom, a leading figure in the Democratic Party and a likely contender for the presidency in 2028, denounces the deployment as a brazen abuse of power by a sitting president that has only inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. California's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, immediately files a lawsuit seeking to block the deployment, arguing that sending troops without state consent flagrantly violates both the spirit and the letter of the Posse Comitatus Act. The specter of history looms large. In 1992, a tragic shooting during the last major military deployment in Los Angeles, caused by miscommunication between Marines and local police, left wounds that have never fully healed. Jim McDonnell, Los Angeles police chief, voices his concern once more. The arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles, absent clear coordination, presents a significant logistical and operational challenge. Emotions are not confined to California. Protests have now flared in at least 9 major American cities, from the Bay Area to the Northeast, uniting diverse communities in a common demand for accountability. Even the world of technology is feeling the shockwaves. Waymo, a leader in self-driving vehicles, has been forced to suspend its robotaxi service in downtown Los Angeles after several vehicles were set ablaze in the chaos. The economic fallout is immediate. Insurance claims soar, and small businesses, already battered by economic uncertainty, face further devastation. Voices from across the political spectrum weigh in. California Senator Alex Padilla declares, "The National Guard deployment is not necessary and counterproductive." At the same time, die-hard supporters of President Trump hail the move as a necessary step to restore order and defend national sovereignty. The administration, for its part, justifies its actions by invoking a rarely used statute, Section 12,406 of the United States Code, insisting that all legal prerequisites have been met. But a deeper question simmers below the surface. Who truly holds the reins of power in moments of crisis? The state, the city, or the president? With lawsuits flying and courtrooms packed, a high-stakes legal showdown is underway. Attorney Robert Patillo puts it bluntly. Deploying troops without state coordination is a militarization of civilian protest. As Marines wait in staging areas near Seal Beach, just 30 miles south of downtown Los Angeles, the world watches with mounting anxiety. The United States Marine Corps, boasting over 172,000 active-duty personnel and more than 33,000 reservists, now finds itself on the front lines of a constitutional drama. Is this the dawn of a new era, one in which America's military becomes a regular force in domestic affairs? Or will the courts intervene, pulling the nation back from the brink before a new precedent takes hold? The city stands at a crossroads. The deployment of Marines and National Guard troops into the heart of Los Angeles has thrust the United States into uncharted territory, raising urgent questions about constitutional limits and the very soul of American democracy. As legal challenges accelerate, California's lawsuit to block the president's deployment heads for an emergency hearing this Thursday, a decision that could reverberate through the nation's legal and political systems for years. Legal experts are sounding the alarm. Law professor Gregory Magarian warns, invoking the Insurrection Act would escalate the situation to a constitutional crisis. If the courts side with the president, other leaders could see this as a green light to use military force whenever there is unrest. The risks are colossal. In the short term, the presence of military units on American streets could further inflame tensions, not calm them. The scars of the 1992 Los Angeles riots are still visible, reminders of how quickly miscommunications between armed forces and local police can lead to tragedy. The fatal shooting that year, sparked by confusion between Marines and law enforcement, stands as a grim testament to the dangers of deploying soldiers in unfamiliar urban environments. If the courts affirm the president's authority this time, the ruling could become a precedent, a template for future administrations facing waves of protest, dissent, or even ordinary civil unrest. Over time, the normalization of military intervention in domestic affairs could erode the boundaries between policing and warfare, weakening a tradition that has kept federal troops out of local law enforcement for nearly 1.5 centuries. On the flip side, a strong judicial rebuke could reaffirm the value of long-standing constitutional protections and rein in executive overreach. Such a decision would send a powerful message that the Posse Comitatus Act and the separation of powers remain central to American democracy, providing a roadmap for how the country can navigate future crises without turning city streets into militarized zones. For viewers watching this story unfold, what does it all mean? First, it's a stark reminder that the balance of power in government and the freedoms we often take for granted are not set in stone. They depend on public vigilance, civic engagement, and an informed citizenry. Understanding how foundational laws like the Insurrection Act and the Posse Comitatus Act work is no longer the exclusive domain of legal scholars. These statutes are shaping today's headlines, tomorrow's protests, and ultimately, the rights of everyday Americans. Second, this crisis highlights the vital importance of transparency and accountability in government. When decisions involving the use of force are open to public scrutiny and legal challenge, democracy is strengthened. As Hina Shamsi, National Security Director at the American Civil Liberties Union, forcefully states, it's really recklessly undermining our foundational democratic principle that the military should not be policing civilians. Third, the events in Los Angeles underscore just how quickly the boundaries between security, politics, and daily life can blur. The ripple effects are everywhere. Waymo's groundbreaking robo-taxi service brought to a standstill, businesses shuttered and livelihoods threatened, and families living in fear of separation or violence. Even Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced the deployment of National Guard troops across his state in response to spreading protests, showing just how national this crisis has become. The implications stretch far beyond the present moment. If federal military deployments become normalized, the delicate balance between freedom and security, one of the core dilemmas of any democracy, could shift in unpredictable ways. The line between protest and insurrection, between dissent and disorder, could blur, making it easier for future leaders to claim extraordinary powers in the name of restoring order. The Insurrection Act, for example, has been used only 30 times in American history, the last time being the Los Angeles riots of 1992. Each invocation carries profound risks and sets precedents that echo for decades. Yet there is also the possibility for renewal. If the courts act decisively to limit presidential power, they could help heal wounds and reaffirm the checks and balances that define American government. They could make clear that, even in moments of national crisis, the rule of law prevails over the rule of force. For ordinary Americans, the lessons are immediate and practical. Now more than ever, it's crucial to stay informed, to vote, to speak out, and to hold leaders accountable. This is not just a fight about laws and legal doctrines. It's about who we are as a nation and what kind of future we want to build. And here's a secret most people don't know. The Posse Comitatus Act, the bedrock law that keeps most of the military out of civilian life, was passed in 1878 as a direct response to the presence of federal troops occupying the South after the Civil War. Its roots are tangled in some of America's deepest historical wounds, making today's decisions not just about the law, but about the country's identity, its values, and its vision for the future. As the story continues to unfold, one question grows louder. Will the military's role in domestic affairs be checked by the courts? Or are we witnessing the birth of a dangerous new precedent for American democracy? The answer remains unwritten. The coming weeks could bring the most consequential legal ruling on presidential power in decades. If the courts uphold the limits enshrined in law, it could restore the fragile balance between security and liberty. But if not, the sight of federal troops patrolling American cities may become a new, unsettling normal. If you found this story as eye-opening as we did, make sure to subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the forces reshaping global economics and technology. And let us know in the comments. Do you think the courts will stand up for democracy's guardrails, or has the precedent already been set? Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged,